and I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and it is Glenn Compton. Glenn is the chairman of ManaSota-88, a Florida nonprofit organization created and incorporated in 1968. Its environmental protection efforts protecting the public's health and preservation of the environment span more than 50 years. He will be discussing the Piney Point Phosphogypsum Stack in Palmetto, Florida. All yours, Glenn.
Hi. Well, thank you. That was quite unexpected. But next slide, please. Piney Point is located in Manatee County. It's defunct. It's no longer in operation, but it's still there. And it's probably in one of the worst possible places you could locate a phosphogypsum stack. It's adjacent to Tampa Bay. It's subject to storm surge. It's next to Bishop's Harbor, which is one of the prettiest places you can see in Florida. And it's also near TRC Aquatic Preserve. There's a saying in Manatee County that if you go to a Manatee County Commission 50 years from now, there's two things that will be on the agenda: sewage spills and Piney Point phosphate. So this isn't going away anytime soon. And anything that can go wrong did go wrong at this plant. Next slide. A little bit about the history. There's been 6 owners since it was constructed back in 1966. There's been numerous spills throughout the years. We had employee deaths back in 1991. The first company that owned it went bankrupt in 1993. Next slide. And so in January of 2001, we had another bankruptcy take place. In February of that same year, EPA came in and took over the operations of Piney Point. Then they handed it off to FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And we had a storm that same year, and the dikes were in danger of collapsing. And in fact, according to the DEP statement, we had to discharge. The dikes were in danger of collapsing, and we could have lost it all. And that was back in November of 2001. And unfortunately, we're kind of in the same situation that we were back in 2001. And tomorrow, the Manatee County Commission has to decide what they're going to do about the current situation where we could lose it again, and possibly, ruin a very good aquatic preserve next door. There was also a lot of rain in the summer of 2003. And so what they had to do with the stack water is they put it onto large barges and they put it out into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, about a mile offshore, and they dumped it. There was a lot of uproar because there was also red tide that same year, and they tried to link the two together, and there wasn't really enough data and analysis to say that the two were linked together. But common sense tells you that if you put a lot of stormwater and nutrient loaded water into the Gulf of Mexico, bad things are going to happen. The following year, we had over 1 billion gallons of water released into Bishop's Harbor, which is a relatively shallow area that feeds into Tampa Bay. And again, if you ever get a chance to go to Bishop's Harbor, it is one of the prettiest and used to be pristine areas in the state of Florida, but it's over the years has had more pollution enter into it from Piney Point than it should have ever received in its entire lifetime. Next slide. In 2006, the current owners bought the property. It's a limited liability corporation. It's HRK Holdings. They currently manage it. And I don't recommend a limited liability corporation owning a phosphogypsum stack, but that seems to be the way that things are done in the state of Florida. They had the great idea to accept some of the dredged material from Port Manatee, which is adjacent to Piney Point, and empty out one of the phosphogypsum stack ponds, and in its place put dredged material. In 2011, the liner that was underneath all this dredged material broke, and there was a tremendous amount of wastewater that went into Bishop's Harbor. Along with it was not only the contamination that was from the phosphogypsum stack, but it was also from the dredged material that came from Port Manatee. Next slide, please. So the current status of where we're at at Piney Point is that there's almost 1 billion gallons of wastewater that's on site. The company has come in front of Manatee County Commission and they're asking for help because they recognize that in a couple of years, the ponds are going to fill up and there's a potential that they're going to reach capacity within the next 2 years. So right now there's about 10 inches of remaining rainfall capacity. The graph that you see here shows you the probability of failure. And if you take a look at where it peaks out, within 4 years, if nothing is done on its current status, then we'll see a total failure of the stacks. Next slide, please. So the current alternatives that are being considered to try to get rid of the wastewater that's there, right now spray evaporation is taking place, but that doesn't get rid of any of the pollutants and it doesn't stop any of the seepage that can get into the groundwater. Manatee County has agreed to accept 50,000 gallons per day from the site and put it into their wastewater treatment system. So that's where the taxpayers are kind of footing the bill to get rid of some of the wastewater right now. There's been a couple of companies that have approached the Manatee County Commission where they will treat and discharge into Bishop's Harbor. That's one thing that the County Commission is going to consider tomorrow to see whether or not that's the route they want to take. And also there's been a lot of presentations and talk over the years about underground injection control wells or deep water injection. And we all know that there's all kind of problems associated with that. You know, just because it's out of sight, out of mind doesn't necessarily mean that it's no longer harmful. But the two options at the bottom, treat and discharge, and underground injection control wells, one of those will probably be decided on tomorrow at the Manatee County Commission workshop that they have. Next slide, please. So what we have learned from Piney Point, there is no economically feasible or environmentally sound way to close an abandoned phosphogypsum stack. That's the bottom line. We've also learned that a limited liability corporation may not be the best managers of a phosphogypsum stack. They're coming back to the taxpayers and they're asking for help. If they don't get it, they're facing a possibility of a total collapse of the earthen dams. Prepare for the worst and expect the best doesn't apply here. There is no best. It's whether or not we can prevent the worst case from happening. So we're looking at a situation right now where the stacks continue to fill up with water, where we will either have a total collapse and annihilation of everything that's in its way, the plant and animal life, and annihilation is really not too strong of a term to use if that earthen dams do break, or we're going to deep well inject, out of sight, out of mind, or we're going to treat and discharge into Bishop's Harbor, which has already received more pollution than it should ever have in its entire lifetime, or we're going to put it on a barge and we're going to put it out into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. So there isn't a good solution here. And I wish I could be optimistic about what's happening, but the way things are going right now, it looks like we're going towards a catastrophic failure in a couple of years. So if you haven't heard about Piney Point yet, I'm afraid that in the future, in the very near future, you're probably going to hear about it. So again, you know, there's no easy solution to this problem that exists here. And we can, you know, sit back and you know, try to hope for the best, but there is no good solution at this point. Thank you very much.